right, what is up, partner up? We're back. I was just telling Isaac that I am amped because if you tuned into last week's episode, you heard me re-deliver my keynote from Supernode, and I happened to have to record these back to back to mash that up. So like, Isaac, I'm amped. What's up? It's just you and me today. We had to reschedule, and so much to talk about.
Jared, it's hard to imagine you getting amped. You know, you're such a non-amped sort of guy. I mean, come on.
Man, my level of conviction in this moment is like, let's recap, Isaac. What?
Yeah.
We've had in news coverage on Partner Hacker, we've had Bessemer Venture Partners in their State of Cloud report talk about how of their 5 predictions for this year, the first 2 are about indirect monetization and being partner led, not from 100 million plus in revenue, but from day one. They've referred to it as quote unquote table stakes. We saw Sarah Wang with Andreessen Horowitz up on the main stage at Supernode talking about how...
I thought that one, by the way, you called me or texted me while you're at Supernode, and you're like, dude, Sarah from Andreessen just said that if they saw 2 deals and one, the company said, oh, we expect to triple our revenue in the next year, and it's 100% direct. And another said we expect to double our revenue in the next year, but it's 50% partner sourced. The latter would be a more attractive investment. When you told me that, I was like, okay, I don't want to publish this unless you can verify that she actually said that, because that is like, that speaks of volumes right there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then we had OpenView too. Like later in the same week.
They're like, hey, product led like is not a thing by itself. You actually have to add this other thing in there, and it's like integrations and this other strategy. And then OpenView kind of had some religion on this as well, which they've always been friendly to the partner persona, in all fairness to OpenView. Yeah. I think some of the first articles I read from Pete Caputa were back on the OpenView blog circa like 2015.
Well, you know, it's funny, the product-led growth thing, I expect to see a lot more conversation around that, because it's funny, this is actually from an OpenView story, but you know, I've been talking about lately in the PhD PPLG, right? Product plus partner-led growth, or Alan Adler talks about ELG, ecosystem-led growth, whatever acronyms come up. But this idea that it's more than just, hey, let users experience your product and let that be the main way that you're marketing. There's something else going on here, and I actually noticed this. OpenView had a story about Optimizely. And we're gonna dig into this more and publish something about it in coming weeks on Partner Hacker to just sort of tell the full story, because they told the classic PLG story of Optimizely, that they created this site where you could go right on Optimizely.com, and you could plug in and you could A/B test websites, like right there, as like experiment with the tool. You know, what would this site look like with this different copy and whatever. It was like this fun little thing, and you know, the basic story is this drove all their growth. It was incredible. Well, I was talking to Chris Samila, and he was like, I was at Optimizely at the time, and there's actually a little piece that isn't mentioned in a lot of these stories about PLG. And that's that they started looking at who was visiting, who was using that tool, and it was all these agency email addresses.
Yep.
It wasn't the end users. And so he was like, So they started reaching out to them and specifically tailoring it towards them. And that's when the real breakthrough came, was selling through these agencies and gearing their you know, offerings and things towards agencies, towards partners. And I think that's such a perfect picture of the marriage of the PLG approach, which is very adaptive and dynamic. And you're kind of like, let's see what we learn from the market by putting it out early. And what you might learn is your partner strategy, right? What you might learn is, oh, our audience isn't the end user. It's somebody else. And I thought that was just really cool. So I think there's going to be a lot more on this product plus partner-led growth approach.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've seen it firsthand, fundamentally transforming businesses, not like theoretically. I mean, PandaDoc's story was dozens of integrations in a strategic alliance. Drift story, very similar. Heck, JobHive's even failed story that I had was all partner based. I mean, integrations with Indeed, Career Builder, Monster, you know, LinkedIn, you name it. I mean, everything I've ever touched and seen has been partner led and product led. So like, I'm drinking that Kool-Aid for sure, Isaac.
So this is something I've been thinking about, Jared. To what extent we to what extent we believe our own bullshit too much, right? So here's what I mean.
Confirmation bias? What specifically? Since we're on this first principles kick, what do you want to tie this to? Confirmation bias or a different thing? Survivor bias? Like what bias do you want to tie this to?
Okay, I want to tie it to something maybe even a little bit more, abstract. The idea that the map is not the territory. I'm sure you've probably heard that before. Because I on Twitter a couple weeks ago, I was saying something about ecosystems thinking or something like that. And some guy, a dev at a software company was like, oh, please don't give me all that. That's just some made up buzzword from some B school hack who's trying to come up with the latest paradigm, it is not some new paradigm, ecosystems, whatever. This is just people always just come up with these new phrases for business, blah, blah, blah. And while I disagree with him, there's an important truth there that I think is worth remembering.
Yeah.
That anytime we have a mental model, a phrase like ecosystems, we often go to what that word comes from, ecology, and we talk about this analogy of natural ecosystems. We have to remember that it is just a model, right? It's a map. It's not the same as the territory. Like the map is different than the actual territory. You need the map often to navigate the territory, but it's not the same thing, right? These are tools, these are mental models we've created to help us understand. And it's useful because what happens is there's a breakthrough, right? A new paradigm for thinking about business, like the lean startup model, or the agile development model, or these different paradigms, and they get lingo and they get phrases, and they're big breakthroughs. But then you get sort of the second generation effect where everyone just kind of memorizes them, and it turns into a dogma that sort of loses any sort of punch. You're just it's like a rote thing. You're following the steps of the paradigm, and they become stagnant. And then a new one is needed. And someone introduces a new paradigm that says the old one is dead. Here's the breakthrough. And of course, the reality is somewhere in the middle. Like the old one, it's not like business was done exactly that way. And then all of a sudden it's done, funnels were exactly how every business was run. And now they're totally run differently with ecosystems. But there is truth to the mental model, the dominance of those models. They get refreshed from time to time. It reminds me of Thomas Kuhn, his famous book, The Nature of Scientific Revolution, about how these paradigms get introduced and they finally allow us to see things that we couldn't understand before because we were stuck in an old model. But then over time, they get stale, and then they become religion, and everybody is forced to speak this language and to give lip service to it, and nobody really knows what it means anymore until a next generation comes along and they have a new paradigm that shatters the old one. And that's a healthy and necessary process. But it is helpful to step back sometimes and be like, look, it's not a perfect analogy. Everything does not perfectly map. People can fall into just using buzzwords and saying, we have an ecosystem first approach, and not knowing what the hell they mean by it. So all this setup.
Know what they mean when they say that.
What's that?
99% of people that may even be saying that. There might be 100 people that are saying it out there in the market. There's not that many yet. But I would say that 99 of them don't actually understand what that means.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't entirely understand it. I'm kind of like, okay.
That's the point. Remember, so I shared a screenshot with you the other day, Isaac. And it was from someone that we're working with. We launched our first ever Partner Hacker Pro Serve stuff, where we're helping some companies out, like a select few, with some of their ecosystem, partner-led models, whatever the heck you want to call it. And they shared an episode of their favorite Partner Up episode. And which one was it? It was the ecology episode, right? And what did we say on there that I think that was so important? You'd be two people walking into the same bay, and one's there to understand everything, and they could study it their entire lives. Why? Because before you even step into the water, you get a glass of water. There's billions of organisms in that one glass of water. The complexity of that ecosystem is so diverse. It's insane. And then there can be one person next to you that all she's doing is studying one species of shark. And she'll never know everything there is to know about that one species of shark. And yet you're supposed to understand the entirety of the ecosystem. The reality is, any person that says they understand 100% of this is full of shit. They are 100% full of shit. So do not believe anyone that's like, I get all of this. What we're trying to do, what I care about, is I think about bringing what you just brought up, right? The map is not the territory. These principles of thinking, like the Warren Buffett models, the Charlie Mungers, like old Charlie's Almanac, like how to think about the world in a way that isn't this financial spreadsheet, CFO driven. Here's how you invest dollars and here's how dollars come out. It only works this one way. If this is the model, it only works this. Wait, our model doesn't work. Shoot, companies, our valuation got slashed 75, 80%. What do we do now? This model doesn't work. Guess what? The map doesn't equal the territory. The model doesn't work when one outside condition changes.
And like when it comes to business stuff, especially, I'm very pragmatic. I see all these mental models as tools in a toolkit. And like when they're useful, use them. They don't have to bat 1,000, right? So here's a little exercise. I call it as if it's true. Four words, as if it's, 4 words. If you have a contraction, at least it's 4. That I find really, really useful. If I come across, and this is exactly what happened with this ecosystems thing. You kind of introduced me to this, like, hey, here's this new paradigm. And I'm like, I can't prove.
Hold on, I just had to
what's that?
Isaac. Is this the IET?
Yeah, I guess so.
Sorry.
I
eat. The IET framework.
Terrible acronym. This is why I'm not writing business books. But you kind of introduced me like, hey, there's this change going on. There's this radical thing. And the story about all the noise in, the getting lost, the signal getting lost in the noise and all that, and the difficulty of rising CAC, that's all obviously true in some ways. But like, okay, this ecosystems paradigm is kind of the new thing. I can't prove that this is absolutely true. But here's what I do find. If I pretend as if it's true, I gain a lot of valuable insight. If I say, okay, I'm going to just put this on as if it's true and go around operating as if it's true, unless and until that starts to cause problems. But as long as that keeps bringing me towards insights that I didn't have previously, it's like a pair of goggles. It's a way of seeing the world differently. And you put those goggles on and you're like, hey, I'm seeing different stuff with this. It's like night vision goggles. Doesn't mean I'm seeing everything that's there or seeing perfectly, but I have a different view than I did before. So I'm going to keep operating and using that model. So I think it's just important to remember that. Like you don't have to perfectly buy into everything that everybody's saying about ecosystems and partnerships in order to say, let's try on this lens. What if the traditional sales and marketing funnel is dead? Like Brent Adamson, who we were going to have on, we had to reschedule with all sorts of crazy stuff, but saying, hey, it's dead. Let's adopt that worldview for a while and let's see what the implications of that are,
Yeah, I mean, Smart did it in his Harvard little mini case study on the HBR, right? Then they called it the Unified Commercial Engine, and it was not really anything like GTM as a framework, not really anything about sales and marketing alignment. They rebuilt all of their internal functions from the ground up, from the jobs to be done JTBD framework for the customer, which, I mean, is that really that revolutionary? Like, whenever I first read it, I was like, wow. And now I'm like, duh.
Yeah.
So operating as if it's true, it's almost like, I don't know. That's why I think podcasts have been a fun vehicle, and like the most popular podcasts, like even a second tier podcaster who's wildly popular, like a Lex Fridman, who I enjoy immensely. Because why? Lex purposely will do things like, hey, let's steel man this argument, right? So let's prop this. I think was that a Peter Thiel thing? It might have been a Peter Thiel thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where I first heard it, but I've definitely heard it from Thiel and some others. Yeah.
So that's a common thing though. But like that, what a more interesting way to have a conversation. Like, hey, let's prop this up and see what the world is like. You can also call it the suspension of disbelief. Like, hey, just suspend disbelief. It's such a helpful framework because actually, what is hilarious is I didn't want to admit these things were true. Operating in a partner function that was like, I was like, maybe the world is changing, but like, I also don't want to seem crazy. Like, partner people aren't loved. Like, well, what if, I guess I didn't ask that question, but like, what if this is right?
Yes.
And then I look back and I'm like, oh, all that stuff I saw happening in marketing automation that like I was aware of. I was totally aware of. I had a marketing freaking agency. Like, I saw this story happen and everyone around me get wildly rich, and I did nothing about it. I did absolutely nothing. And, so I'm like, well, what if this is true? And like, it's only gotten more true. Like, I've only, operating as if it's true. I haven't seen less data. supporting this.
Yeah. Well, and there's some pretty wild questions you can ask yourself to push and play around with some hypotheticals like, okay, we had a debate, the death of portals a while back. What if you just asked yourself the question, what if we weren't allowed to have a portal at all, a partner portal? How would we do things? No, you're probably not going to come away from that exercise getting rid of your partner portal, but you probably are going to come away realizing that you're kind of unthinkingly outsourcing stuff to your portal, thinking that it's doing work that it's not doing. Because if you ask yourself, what if we couldn't rely on it at all whatsoever? How else might we get the job done, right? Or if you ask yourself, what if we literally were not allowed to ever do marketing or sales through the traditional approach? How would we possibly get our product in front of people if we weren't allowed to? This is Bryn from PartnerStack, who we're partnering with on Ecosystem Week 2022. So we got to talk about in a second. But the question he asked in his presentation is like, what if we had no sales team, right? You don't necessarily come away from that eliminating your sales team, but you do come away from that just asking those radical questions. What if we move to a future where paid ads are illegal, let's say? What would you do? Right? So I think those can be really useful exercises to put on these lenses of take the most radical version of an ecosystems world, a decade of partnerships, whatever, and think about how some of those transformations might give you some useful actions today.
I'll go back to Charlie Munger, and that's the mental model of invert, right? Always invert, right? Inversion is a very helpful principle. Just look at the problem from the other side. Like, what if this thing is true? 100%, because like that, stepping into the Bay example of we're going to observe this system and try to learn everything we can. And we're going to just observe this one system, the shark, the species, and learn everything that we can. The reality is that as you were framing this conversation, Isaac, and talking about operating as if it were true, as if it were true. What I was thinking about was there's not as much data, not even close. There's not as much insight or shared understanding or knowledge or volumes of work where things are connected together around this new emergent system of businesses sharing their data. So I think the invention of Crossbeam, of Reveal, right? These escrow service platforms like Crossbeam and Reveal, they're groundbreaking for a number of reasons. Why? People don't understand that for the first time ever, businesses are sharing what we call second party data. There was a legal debate 2 years ago as to whether or not second party data actually existed, by the way. And I've been in these $700 an hour lawyer sessions, lawyers debating this. It's the first time ever where there's been a new order, a new system that has emerged. And what is that? That's where businesses start sharing their data. Before, how that happened was spreadsheets, right? So it's you could fly into this place and you're in a new location, then you fly back out. You didn't establish permanent residency there, right? Now we've established permanent residency inside of other businesses. Our businesses are now intertwined. Yep. So using the analogy of an ecosystem, it's just a framework to be wait, nature's worked really well when we've had sources versus resources. Nature does a good job of being a resource is something that circle, it's reusable. But business does a really, at least in its early stages, early businesses, they have sources, right? Sources of leads, ads. There's no there. It's a source.
Yes.
Notice how you see first source. Does it say first resource? No, it says source, because the only way you get more of it is by going and getting more of it. There's no recycling of anything. So this is an emergent phenomenon. And all that we have to look at is what I was writing down is from emergence to dominance. What we're saying, Isaac, is that this is going to be the dominant way, because new systems emerge and sometimes they die off.
Yep.
But as it become dominant, well, we have some data on a sticky note that I just came up with, but
that looks like the back of your checkbook or something there.
Right. The sticky note.
Oh, a sticky note. Okay.
Airbnb. It went from a business that didn't exist to now the most dominant hospitality company in the world, and it is an ecosystem. Period. Full stop. It's a marketplace business by definition. Number one hospitality company in the world. Amazon. It is an ecosystem of millions of interdependent and interconnected players. It is literally the definition of a marketplace. Okay, so like how about B2B? HubSpot, the number one marketing technology company. It's the only independent marketing technology company that is publicly left standing from Marketo, Eloqua, Pardot, HubSpot. Number 4 player. They're 100% ecosystem. Connect, HubSpot agency program. Salesforce, the number one CRM and customer data platform. They're number 1. Shopify, the number 1 e-commerce platform. They're number 1. Uber, the number 1 transportation brand. So wait a second. I mean, operating as if it were true, every category that I could think of, the dominant player has a more sustainable approach, an ecosystem approach, if you will, over that direct one way. Name a category where that's not true, that isn't run by some state-funded monopoly.
I love how you said there's kind of this maturation process. You get a new market and, it's like, okay, just go grab, sources versus resources. Just go grab everything you can grab until those sources get lighter and lighter. And then you're like, oh, and I think there's some great analogies there. I mean, think about something like logging industry or something, right? It's like, oh, here's this new territory with all kinds of lumber, all kinds of, materials.
Here's how you do, here's how you do, tree felling, and here's how you be a lumberjack. Here's how you do all that stuff.
Yeah. And then it runs out. And what happens over time? I have a friend whose father, when I was a kid, worked in the lumber industry out in Oregon. And it was incredible as he walked me through the process that they have perfected. It's insane. They have this process where they can go from a empty field to full-grown trees ready to be harvested for paper in 7 years.
And they're recycling it, right? They're
using it, and they're cycling the same quantity of land in this rotation and generating paper because these things have been refined. People realize, what do you first do when you get to a territory? You just, you're a pioneer. You're on the frontier. You're just cutting down any tree you can and harvesting it to survive, right? But then the trees get thin, it runs out. And then you realize there's all these secondary effects. The trees get thin and now you're left with grassland, and then there's erosion, and then you got all these, and you realize over time, oh, this isn't going to sustain itself, right? And you develop these more advanced, and I think in the market, we're in that, it's like digital age, software eating the world, and then you get cloud computing and these different things, and it's like scramble, just like get leads, fill up your funnel, just go grab them from everywhere. And now that's kind of running dry. It's like a one-trick pony. Now you need a system that can sustain itself, that doesn't have to, constantly go out and fight for eyeballs to get this person. It's like this like, one person's eyeballs you're trying to get in your funnel versus somebody else, and the CAC is going up, and it's like that wooded area. The trees are getting thin. There's not enough trees for everybody. So creating that system, it is interesting because it's back to the map and the territory thing, right? We're in a phase where there isn't yet a map for this approach. There are people exploring the territory. There are early navigators, and that's how you make maps, right? The early people who are exploring, they take down notes of what they see. Oh, here's some headlands here, and here's some shoals over here, and then cartographers create a map out of the stories from the explorers on the ground. And so that's why I'm excited about kind of the role that we're trying to play in this as Partner Hacker, is kind of be those cartographers. Say, let's get the stories from on the ground, and let's help paint a map of what's really going on here in this ecosystem's era. So
maybe even biologists or ecologists, because I think what we're also pointing out is like, or at least what I'm calling out behavior that I'm like, that's predatory. It's not sustainable. And oh, look, you were relying on that advertising stream. I can bring up dozens of counterexamples on why, if you're anything related to the advertising business in B2B, how that's not a sustainable component of your business in terms of growth. Go out 5 years from now and paint backwards for me how advertising is going to be the majority of your mix. Go for it. I challenge any CMO on the face of the planet to that debate. Not a chance. They don't stand a chance. There's nothing sustainable about buying my attention. Just like there's nothing sustainable about me going out and whacking half of Pinellas County and taking all the pine trees and being like, guess what? I have a logging company. And then looking forward in 10 years and being like, I no longer have a logging company. I don't know how to build this business differently. And that's happening to CMOs and CROs everywhere, Isaac, is they're like the logging company people that you just talked about. And they're going, oh, shoot, there's no more forest. We can't just, like the forest through the trees analogy. No, the forest is gone. It's gone. So there needs to be a new approach.
I was talking to Cody Sunkel, co-founder of Partner Fleet, and since we might as well just add more analogies onto the heap. Why not? We got maps, territories, biology, forest, whatever. He was like, look, we're in that phase where, yeah, the measurement is not there yet. It always lags. He said, think of like the fitness industry, right? You've got fitness trainers and coaches, and they will realize that something that they're doing with their clients is working. And they'll put it into practice and they'll learn from anecdotal evidence and they'll get all these stories and successes and case studies. And it will take like 10 years before like the officially published peer-reviewed science comes out to say, here's why it's working. And here's all the details about what's happening on the cellular level. He's like, but the practitioners, they don't need that. They just learn it and they know it's working. He said, we're kind of like that in partnerships. People who are doing it, people who they understand, look, I can't prove it to you through measurement. The science hasn't been developed yet. It's in the early days, but I can tell you from my on-the-ground experience, it's working. When we go with a partner-first strategy, it's working, right? You don't need to convince the people who are in the trenches. They just haven't had the sort of the science to back it up developed yet. And I think that's the era that we're slowly starting to enter into. We're starting to get some of those details, that are kind of helping to explain and helping people to measure what exactly is going on.
100%. If you look at using your analogy, like the benefits of like sauna, banya, right? So if you go to Scandinavian countries or Eastern European, banya, sauna, like everyone's just like, no, of course it's great for you. And then you're like, well, really, where's the science? And then the past like 3-4 years, the amount of science that's come out about the effects of sauna, heat shock proteins and what it does for your body. I mean, I drank the Kool-Aid. I got a sauna. I was all about that. I'm like, yeah, actually, this is pretty amazing once the data backed it up. Right. And that's like this giant explosion of like, oh, wow, there are benefits to being able to do things like this. Whereas like Scandinavia, it's like, we've been doing this for hundreds of years, folks. Like, what are you talking about?
So this is a great segue to, I'm really excited about this.
We also need to talk about this, the Sunday Story too. So don't forget about that one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, trust me. That's my other note. I got Sunday Stories next. Tyler Calder from PartnerStack DM'd us and was like, hey, everybody's talking about ecosystems, but a lot of times people are like, okay, well, what the hell? Like, okay, let's say it's true. What the hell does it actually mean? How do you translate this theory into my day-to-day work in my company? What does it mean for strategy, for my job? And he's like, what if we just got all the best minds together and we try to answer this question? What is an ecosystem and what does it mean? And so we kind of co-hatched Ecosystem Week 2022. Super excited about it. You can see right up on partnerhacker.com. There's a little ad for it and a link to go register. But we're doing with PartnerStack. We're co-hosting this like 4-day event. It's like 2 hours, each afternoon for 4 days, virtual event with all kinds of amazing speakers. Pete Caputa, Jill Rowley, Jay McBain, Alan Adler. We got, it's going to be awesome. We got a bunch of really great sessions. But I think it's just great to have.
And hundreds of people already registered, but especially by the time this live, it's going to be hundreds and hundreds.
Literally, Jared, the landing page went live, and within about 4 hours, we haven't even marketed it yet. The PartnerStack was like, oh, we have over 100 registrants. We literally had been posted to like a Slack group, and that was it, mentioned in the one PhD. So yeah, I think it's gonna be awesome. And I just, we're leading with WTF is an ecosystem. And I think that's perfect because it's like, okay, you guys got me. I'm intrigued. But how do you go from just buzzword to something real? And I just think it's going to be a really, really fun thing. So anyway, definitely check that out. We're going to be talking more about it. I'm
only out on partnerhacker.com. So go to partnerhacker.com, big square. we may or may not do actual advertising in the future. Right now, it's only stuff that like is only us. So we're trying to be a center of, a node of trust, if you will.
Absolutely.
Where, like, only ad is like our stuff that we actually trust and vet. So go check it out at partnerhacker.com.
Yeah, really, really excited about that event, and I know you've got a fun little working on the schedule. I don't even know if I told you. I just put you on there with a slot, Jared, called "Why I Hate the Go-to-Market Framework." So, there you go.
I was like, I couldn't have come up with a better title myself. Let's go. Instead of, like, I get to go from evangelist to like hate monger. Real quick. So like, I'm gonna be showing up salty. I'm gonna go for a swim in the Gulf of Mexico that morning. Let the salt dry around my eyes like I was fishing this weekend, and I'm going to come salty, and this is not going to be a session that you want to send your CRO, or send it to your CRO and be like, hey, can you refute this? So I'm going to be coming in with the antithesis of why go-to-market is dead. I'm putting it.
Jared, I just need to catch up with you because, like, okay, you were at Supernode, super busy doing a bunch of stuff there, and then you got sick and you were offline for a little bit, and then it was your birthday, and then it was Memorial Day. So anyway, you've been like out there in the world talking with all these partnerships people at Supernode. Give me like, besides some of the things we already talked about with Bessemer and A16Z, what are you seeing? Like, what's going on? What's top of your mind right now from the last couple of weeks?
I think the thing that is most interesting to me is I wish there was a way to measure this. Like, I have a book, which it's up on my top shelf. I don't want to grab it right now. It's definitely a graveyard of like my startup ideas. I have many. Some that are like, wow, yeah, that would have been real smart, to many that were like, wow, I'm really glad I didn't start that. What a stupid idea. One of them was like, that I have in my head is like, how the heck do we measure this trust? Right? Like, how is I had trust is the new data. Is there a way to KPI that, to measure that, to turn it into a unit? And obviously there's a massive amount of really smart people in the Web3 and crypto space that are thinking similarly, like from a different worldview, but like same baseline, right? So decentralized, fully autonomous distributed networks, right? Like there's a trust component, like it's literally called trustless, right?
There's a ton of overlap with that world sort of Web3 idea and this second party data idea as well.
Totally, which we're not going to talk about on this one because you and I have a lot to talk about on that one.
Okay, all right. we'll put that on pause because I have been really percolating that for a while.
Totally. So it unlocks a whole bunch of value there. And what I was thinking about as it relates to that is like, okay, is there a way to KPI this? Okay, well, clearly it's what's governing influence more than design, than copy, than experience. Like, what is governing people more than anything right now, than any other factor? Let's say we had a matrix of factors. To me, trust, like the strength of that relationship to you, that is of a higher order right now than it's ever been. And I'm seeing examples everywhere. One example that I gave in my Supernode keynote that literally just came to me, and I'm like, because this is like a first party thought. I didn't read this anywhere, but immediately I had hundreds of people clapping their hands and being like, yes, absolutely. So Isaac, whenever you travel, how do you decide where you're traveling to? Do you go read reviews of the places? Well, maybe. But haven't you noticed, let me just ask, haven't you noticed how like every single thing you've gone to purchase of recent, like everything has a 4.7 star rating? It's not 4.3. It's like, oh, something's wrong. And it's not 5. Oh, you're lying. Everything has 4.7.
Dude, I in fact, just the other day, I was in South Carolina visiting family, and I was looking at which coffee shop I wanted to work out of. I was working out of a coffee shop on Friday. And so I just Googled coffee shops, and Google Maps comes up, and there was like 3 within a close distance. And you know what I did? I looked at the ratings, and I just saw the star ratings there, and my brain immediately was like, "That's meaningless." They were literally all 4.6 or 4.7, right, and I was like, "Meaningless." They know how to game it. You know what I do? 2 things. 1, I texted my niece and nephew who live there and who are, early 20s, and they work out of coffee shops. 2, I clicked on the photos. Real people on the ground taking photos of the inside of the
Bingo.
coffee shop, because that will give me an idea of what the experience is going to be like, better than this kind of gamed system of these ratings,
So obviously, I said, this trust, like emergence of that trend. I had conviction of that months ago. Like, I was willing to risk my entire career and then risk your entire career and bring you over to be like, hey, Isaac, come do this. That's how much conviction I had. But you know what's crazy is how much conviction I'm seeing in the market. That conviction and passion level, I seem less crazy every single time I'm in a room full of people, or I have a new conversation with a new CRO, a new CMO, a new CEO. You know how many I've been spending a lot of time with VCs lately. And not that I'm raising money, not that we're raising money, it's that they're looking for information surrounding this, and they have conviction.
Yes.
So the most important team members in a lot of venture capital orgs, like, there's traditional departments in B2B, marketing, sales, customer success. Guess what? VCs, they don't have any of that. There isn't like a head of marketing, a head of sales, and a head of customer success. There's typically like the partners, and then what else? Well, there's typically a head of platform. Why? Because their platform is their portfolio companies, and their portfolio companies are the only thing. Every VC knows this. So, like, I can go talk to any VC in the world right now, Isaac, and have the same convo, and they'll be like, yeah, you're right. Why? Yep. Because they know for a fact that they can't spend ad dollars on this. They can't send emails. The only thing that's going to bring them deal flow is their ecosystem. It's their platform. It's their portfolio companies and their partners, right? Their LPs, their GPs, and their portcos. So the conviction level on this in the market, not us. I don't know. Either people are drinking our Kool-Aid and we're seeing those effects, but I think we're just riding a wave, man. And we have no idea how big this wave is. It's giant. The conviction in the market to me is what's really, really interesting. Like the people, the partner practitioners. Here's what I mean by that. Like, I just got off a call 2 hours ago with a VP of partner at a $1 billion hypergrowth company. And what he said was the amount of conversation happening in the market, partnerhacker.com, the PhDs, the podcasts, like all the stuff going on, but then like what's happening in communities, etc. He's like, I've completely taken control of the executive team debate at this juncture. Whereas I promise 5 months ago, she was not in a position to do so. The market conditions weren't there. But even if she was like a prophet, like it really was like really ahead of it and was like that badass, I don't think the conviction was there. Now when I'm talking to people, they're like, come at me, bro. Yep. Meet me outside. Right? Like they're not scared of these hard conversations because it is hard conversations, hard times in the market. Half of the tech world have lost half of its value or more. So
what's been really fun for me, well, you've been kind of, out there on the speaking circuit, doing a lot of meeting stuff the last few weeks. I have been busy digging in detail to the specific stories of those pioneers and explorers who have been in the trenches, living in this future world we're talking about for the last several years, while very few others are. And learning their stories, it's because we're launching, I'm really excited about this. We're launching sort of a feature that will be recurring. It won't be every single week, but we'll go, we'll have these we reserve the right on Sundays, the one day a week that the Partner Hacker Daily does not go out. We're launching Sunday stories. And we're starting with stories from our launch sponsors, the companies that we worked with when we first, we did our big launch and who are listed in our marketplace and partnered with us on that. And so as I'm diving in, I'm interviewing them, I'm talking to them, I'm kind of learning more about their category, their product, their customers. And I'm putting these stories together, which is what I love. I absolutely love founder stories, category stories, customer stories. Because to me that like humanizes it. And it's so cool to see the things that we're seeing all this excitement about, talking with people who've been already doing that and living in that world for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes longer. In the case of companies like, Impact, for example, they've been living in this new world and they're almost like so far in it they don't realize what a head start they have in the way that they see the world on the rest of the rest of startup land. So I'm really excited. So I'm trying to think when this episode goes live. I think this will be like a couple days after the very first Sunday story,
Yeah,
and the very first one,
which is Sunir, right? Isn't that AppBind?
yes, which is Sunir from AppBind, and I mean, just such a great
Let's give
story.
a quick recap of that story, just so because I want to like unpack that for a second, and then we'll wrap.
Yeah. And his is perfect because his like personal journey is basically it's like a perfect allegorical arc of all the things we talk about, what the realization is of like, oh, this isn't working in one specific area. So Sunir, worked for several different SaaS companies, worked on the sort of partnership side.
And marketing. He was head of marketing and partnerships at companies like Fresh.
Yep, exactly. And so then he left to start his own marketing agency as kind of like, wanted a change of pace, wanted something new. So he's running this marketing agency, and he's got a client who's a small business owner, brick and mortar business owner. And he's setting up his whole, website, marketing automation, flow, all this stuff. And he sent him like a half a dozen or more emails saying, okay, I need you to go and create an account on HubSpot and, whatever, Instapay, whatever. There's 4, 5, or 6 software tools he needs him to go set up. And he's not getting responses, and this deadline is coming for when this is all supposed to be launched. So he finally gets on a call with the guy, and he's doing a screen share, and he's like, look, you've got to go in and create these accounts so that I can log in and set everything up in your stack. And they're walking through this process, and you know how this stuff is. They're trying to get an account set up, getting out your credit card, validating, all this stuff. And in the middle of the call, the client says, he sets up maybe 2 of the 6 accounts that they were supposed to get set up. And he goes, look, I don't have time for this. I don't need any of this. He goes, it would be easier. He goes, you're making it harder than if I'd never hired you at all. He goes, the whole reason I hired you was so that I wouldn't have to do all this stuff. This is more work than if I didn't hire you in the first place. This isn't going to work anymore. Like basically you're fired as my, finish this project and we're done. And then he said something that I think is so brilliant. And this is kind of what led to the creation of AppBind for Sunir. Again, it was a metaphor. It was an analogy. This is why they're so powerful. Go read George Lakoff's book, Metaphors We Live By. I'm always talking about it. But he said, Sunir, when I hire a plumber, the plumber doesn't ask me to go out and buy the pipes. They just buy all the equipment I need and they give me a bill at the end. Right? So why would I hire a marketing agency to set everything up? Why are you making me go and buy all these products? Can't you just buy them for me? And so AppBind was born to solve that problem, right? And so to enable the agencies to go ahead and just do all that, to create a shared email account and a temporary credit card that is controlled by the client, but that you don't need to get, they pre-approve however much you're supposed to spend, and you just put it in the normal bill. And so you don't have to wait on them. They don't have to go through all this. And like, it's such a simple solution when you describe it, but when you understand what all the implications are, because this is all about software companies, they still have a funnel that's built under the assumption that the end user is going to be the one doing the purchasing and doing the setup and doing the demo and doing the setting up the billing and all that stuff. And that's not the case increasingly. And the agencies, they're like, there's no customer journey for them, even though they're increasingly the customer. And so like just realizing that the world has changed and these SaaS companies haven't sort of gotten hip to that yet. And these agencies are trying to figure out how the hell can I resell your tool to my customer without putting my personal credit card in there and going through all this crazy stuff with, data and all this other stuff. So I just think it's such a great snapshot of the fact that like the customer has moved on. They've moved on to a world where they don't expect to be going and buying this stuff themselves. They're going to hire an agency to do that. But the SaaS companies don't get it yet. And AppBind is this great way to kind of bring that all, solve that.
I mean, literally, Isaac, I just signed up for AppBind because I'm like, oh my God, these first ProServe deals that we're doing, I got to buy some partner tech and I got to put this stuff together. And I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, we have to do this the same way. And no way I'm going to let these SaaS companies stand in the freaking way of like the client just getting what they want. It's like, I know you think you deserve to own that customer relationship, but I promise you it's only going to piss them off more than it is going to help you.
Yep.
They trust me. They trust Will. They have no idea who you are.
Yep.
And like that's why I love the Sunir Appine story. The whole like, it's like the plumber asking me to go buy the parts. It's like,
Yes.
what are you talking about? No, you're the agency. Do it. I love
It,
the Appine story and the origin story, and I think this is what's cool is it's seeing the vision kind of come together of like actually trying to do some journalism on these freaking companies and these
yes.
stories. Like I've not been a friendly person to media in the past couple years at all. Like any mainstream media, and then here we are, Isaac starting a media company. Um, and why? Because I think media serves a very important purpose of like actually telling stories.
Yes.
Like the
Yes.
human real side of like this is a legit business. Like I'm a big fan of what iBound's doing, and it's actually solving a problem for me as an agency for these organizations trying to build partner ecosystems. So like I'm happy to cover that story.
Telling stories, this is what I love and I think excites me about the world we're in, because the idea of media as this just sort of like objective feed of factual information, everybody has lost trust in that for good reason, right? But instead of what is winning, though, are trust-based community content media platforms that don't pretend to not have a point of view, right? So think about the stuff like,
That's what people hate when people see the CNN segment or the Fox
yes,
segment, and it's like it's presented as fact and
right.
truth and justice,
Whereas
and it's
like,
like that's
you
your
know,
spin. Just don't lie to me.
yeah, and something as simple as like Humans of New York, for example, amazing media company that just started. It's literally, but there's a clear point of view, right? What is their whole thing? They're going to find an interesting person and they're going to tell a story, and it always has a positive spin. And they're not hiding that. They're like, yeah, we want to make things interesting. We want, even if it's tragic, we want it to have hope and be uplifting, right? Or like anything geared towards a particular community. I mean, look at like, if you go find content on Product Hunt, you know that Product Hunt is coming with a point of view, right? Because it's about people, independent builders, and people discovering new products. They're not pretending to not. And so this is what I love about these stories at Partner Hacker. They're journalistic, and we're trying to tell these stories, but we're bringing, very obviously, we have trust is the new data. We have a point of view about the world, about where it's going, and the community that we work with, and we're not hiding that. We're not pretending to be the source of, objective daily, this happened and this happened, sequence of events type stuff. This is not historiography or whatever. This is storytelling that, hey, look at all these stories that fit into this worldview that's unique to us. If you want to get news about other stuff, go somewhere else. But if you want to understand what's happening in this era of ecosystems, we want to tell those stories. So it's been really, really fun digging into these, and I'm excited to have these stories start coming out, starting with Sunir and Appbind. It's going to be awesome.
So yeah, by the time this is live, so Tuesday, the first week of June here, you'll have seen in the Sunday Stories edition the first one on Appbind. So check it out. Isaac, this was a blast. We didn't have a guest today, and ended up being a lot more fun.
Well, I definitely talked more than my fair share. I had caffeinated coffee this afternoon.
No, that was like good talk time. That was like that was good back and forth. We'll see. Our I was checking the data. And one of our most popular episodes, I think the Jay McBain round 2 is still king. So that's top. But the second most popular episode is our ecology and stability of systems episode. So it's just you and me. So maybe we got another one for the books here as we.
Hey, here's a theory about that relates to everything we're talking about. My guess as to why that would be popular, it has nothing to do with you or I, our individual popularity, or even the content of what we're saying, as much as because we know each other so well and we're so comfortable with each other, there's an honesty to the conversation that people can trust, right? There's just something that happens there. And this is what you get with repeat guests, for example. The more comfortable you get with a guest, the sort of the higher quality. It's like it allows these conversations to get a more natural feel to them, where you don't feel like people are just like nervously making sure they get through the bullet points. Not that any of our guests do that, but you know what I mean? You get time to kind of develop a rapport, and even just the sloppiness and the mistakes almost lets people sort of trust that you're a real person. You're learning through it out loud like they are. So, hey, trust is the new data. Don't say you heard it anywhere else.
Totally, my man. I completely agree. We'll partner up. I think we got our plugs in. another fun episode recapping what happened after Supernode and kind of like the conviction of the moment out there. So thank you all for being a part of the journey so far. Like we just wrapped kind of like the first official month of the site being live. Partner Hacker Daily, we're well over 1,000 peeps now, which like didn't exist a couple of months ago. So clearly there must be something right. So shoot us a feedback, respond to those emails. We're real people. We do respond. Love to hear what's working and what's not, folks. And until next time, Isaac, peace out, partner up.
What's working for me is that purple hue in the background. I like your lighting effects today, Jared.
Well, that was because I did have to do the Ecosystem Week promo. So that's the partner stack colors. I changed the hue based on, what I'm the mood or the partner that I'm partnering with. All right, y'all.
See you guys next time.